Thank you. Honourable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precincts of Parliament, and it constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual settings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. And members should equally note that anything said on the platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when requested to speak. The microphones are very sensitive and it will pick up noise which may disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone, and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise a point of order. The Secretariat will assist in this regard. Lastly, when using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or to desist from unnecessary points of order. The first item on the order paper is the first reading debate on the Long-Term Insurance Amendment Bill. I will now recognize the Honourable Kwankwa.
House Chair Frolic, good to see you. Thank you so much. House Chair and colleagues, the purpose of the bill is to amend the Long-Term Insurance Act number 52 of 1998 by requiring the authority to prescribe rules relating to protecting a policyholder of multiple funeral policies for the same beneficiaries, and to require a long-term insurer to offer advice within a certain period to existing policyholders related to consequences of holding multiple funeral policies for the same beneficiaries. The bill also provides that non-disclosure of existing funeral policy by a policyholder does not affect the validity of an affected funeral policy, and that a policyholder of a funeral policy is entitled to cancel any of the multiple funeral policies held for the same life event after being advised of the benefits and implications thereof. The bill lastly provides for a sanction in the event of a failure of a long-term insurer to comply with certain rules and disclosure obligations. The contents of the bill: Clause 1 amends Section 62 of the Principal Act by making certain insertions, provides for definitions of the words used in inserted subsections. Subsection 3B requires that the authority must prescribe rules that relates to determining if a beneficiary under a funeral policy applied for is already a beneficiary under a different funeral policy issued by the long-term insurer. Subsection 3C places an obligation on a long-term insurer to disclose all existing policy holders the benefits and limitations on the benefits under each funeral policy held by that policyholder for the same life event. Subsection 3D entitles the policyholder to, after receipt of the advice contemplated in subsection 3C, cancel any of the funeral policies held for the same life event. And lastly, subsection 3E provides that the non-disclosure of a funeral policy held for the same life event does not affect the validity of an affected funeral policy. And lastly, subsection 3F provides for a sanction in the event that a long-term insurer fails to comply with certain rules and disclosure obligations. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kwankwa. Also good to see you, sir. Honourable members, in terms of Rule 285, Sub-Rule 4, Paragraph A, there is no speakers list for first reading debates, and members may not speak for longer than 3 minutes upon being recognized by the presiding officer. I will now recognize political parties in the same sequence that we use for the declarations of vote to make their input. I now recognize the MK Party.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members, I rise in support of this long insurance amendment bill for 2026, a vital measure to strengthen customers' protection, promote fairness in the insurance sector, and ensure that ordinary South Africans are not disadvantaged by insurance arrangements they do not fully understand. At the heart of this bill is a simple principle. A person who pays for insurance must clearly understand what they are paying for. The funeral policies are not luxury products. For many working class and poor families, they are a critical form of social protection, ensuring that loved ones can be buried with dignity without incurring debt or financial hardship. Yet too often, policyholders who faithfully pay premiums discover only at time of claim that they held multiple funeral policies with the same insurer, and that the benefits are limited and not cumulative as they had assumed. This is the injustice the bill is seeking to correct. The issue is not about existence of multiple policies, but the lack of understanding of their combined effect. A policyholder may reasonably assume that paying a multiple premium means receiving multiple full benefits. The policies are often taken out of different times through different channels via different representatives of the same insurer. The products are then paid consistently over the years. When death occurs, the family expects a full benefit payment. Instead, they may be informed that payouts are restricted due to overlapping cover. Only then do they learn that the protection they believed they had was not what they had understood it to be. Insurance is built on trust, but it is also built on information available to customers at a time. Customers cannot be reasonably expected to interpret complex exclusions, limitations, and interactions between policies. Insurers, however, have the system and have records and the capacity to identify duplication within their own product. For this reason, the bill requires insurers to implement a system that detects when prospective policyholders already hold a funeral policy with the same insurer, and where duplication exists, insurers must disclose the implications and limitations clearly before the new policyholder policy is concluded. This bill also affirms that Parliament's duty to act where information is imbalanced disadvantage the customer. Legislation must protect people, not only regulate institutions. Where sophisticated financial institutions interact with ordinary customers, the law must ensure that the weaker party is not unfairly prejudiced. We are therefore saying to the insurance industry—
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. It's also good to see you. Chair, the Economic Freedom Fighter supports the long-term insurance amendment bill. In fact, we view the practice of insurance companies refusing to pay policyholders who they have collected money from on a monthly basis for many years, on the basis that they hold multiple policies, as fraud, exploitation, and stealing from unsuspecting customers. But this was allowed to happen by the regulators because we have a revolving door between National Treasury, South African Reserve Bank, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and other state bodies that are meant to protect citizens who in state are only obsessed with ensuring that companies in the financial sector make profit and nothing else. They make policy on one hand looking at necessary reform, but on the other hand, they want to ensure that these companies continue to exploit our people. What is more shocking is that the majority of victims are Black people and women, including those in professional spaces and informal trading. Many of these insurance companies operate as if they are law unto themselves. They deny their customers information that rightfully belongs to them. They don't explain in detail what it is selling, and all they are interested in is the number of people they collect monthly premiums from. They don't care about the dignity of the deceased or the livelihood of those who remain behind. In fact, they know from the moment they enroll you as a client that they will not pay out the claim. If it was one reason, it would have been another one. The cause of death, the time of death, the place of death. When you are poor and a Black woman, they are not just going to pay your money. This bill matters because it finally begins to correct that imbalance. First, by compelling insurers to actively check whether a prospective policyholder already holds a funeral policy for the same beneficiaries. The bill shifts the burden of due diligence away from vulnerable consumers and onto the companies that have profited from their confusion. For too long, insurance have hidden behind the excuse of non-disclosure by the client, when it is the insurer itself that designs these opaque products and markets them aggressively without ever explaining their implications. Secondly, the requirement that insurers disclose in writing and within 12 months the cost, benefits, and limitations of every funeral policy a person already holds is a direct blow against the culture of silence that has defined this industry. Policyholders have been kept in the dark for decades, discovering the true terms of their cover only at the moment of a loved one's death, when they are least equipped to fight back. This bill forces transparency at the point where it matters the most, before the claim and not after. Thirdly, the right to cancel duplicate policies and receive a refund without losing more than the value of the benefits already covered gives working class families real power to correct mistakes that were in truth engineered by the industry's own sales practices. This is not a favor to policyholders. It is a basic justice, restoring money that should have never been extracted through deception in the first place. As the EFF, we welcome this development and call on the National Assembly to finalize this important private members' bill expeditiously. We must treat it the way we have treated other private members' bills that were intended to give our people much needed relief. Chairperson, this is an important bill, and therefore we fully support this bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mawatwe. Also good seeing you. I think the virtual sessions means that we have less contact with one another. The IFP.
Thank you. Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The IFP supports the long-term insurance amendment bill because insurance must provide financial protection to South African families, particularly those who can least afford to lose money. We welcome the requirement for long-term insurers to establish systems to identify multiple funeral policies issued by the same insurer and to explain the costs, maximum benefits, and limitations of that cover. This is an important shift towards transparency and informed consumer choice. A policyholder should know what they are paying for and what protection they will actually receive. The impetus of this bill aligns with the IFP's commitment to protecting vulnerable South Africans and ensuring institutions operate with integrity and accountability. In a country where many households must carefully manage limited incomes, consumers should not spend years paying premiums only to discover at the point of greatest need that the protection they believed they had was subject to limitations they did not understand. Even if the bill is implemented, we believe that the regulations prescribed by the authority must ensure that any information provided by an insurer is understandable to a lay South African. This is so that the protections provided by this bill can actually be exercised without unnecessary complexity. We are also encouraged that this bill has no organizational, personnel, or financial implications for the state, as the government must do more with limited public resources. It is important that we strengthen protections for ordinary South Africans without creating unnecessary additional costs for the taxpayer. This is responsible governance. The IFP therefore supports this bill because financial protection should protect people in practice, not on paper. We must ensure that the insurance sector serves South Africans with transparency, fairness, and accountability. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Khadebe. The PA.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I rise on behalf of the Patriotic Alliance to declare our position
On a point of order, Chair.
Yes,
Chair.
Honorable Member, what is the point of order?
This member is calling you the speaker. You are not yet the speaker. We are removing the speaker next week Wednesday, and we will decide who is our speaker. At the moment, you are not our speaker, Chair.
Thank you.
Please, Maudweman, you look so beautiful this morning.
Noted, honorable members. Honorable Mawatwe, you're very sharp this morning. Thank you for the correction.
Thank you,
Please
Honourable Deputy
proceed.
Speaker.
No, not Deputy Speaker. Either it's House Chairperson.
Yeah, you must receive now, or Frolic, so you receive.
Pay me for speaker. Pay me for speaker.
No, okay,
Hey,
let's return to the debate now. Honorable Basson, you may proceed.
I can second that motion.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. I rise on behalf of the Patriotic Alliance to declare our position on this bill. We will acknowledge the noble intention of protecting consumers. The Patriotic Alliance cannot support this bill in the current form. Why not? Because this bill creates the illusion of protection without delivering meaningful relief to our people. It places the burden on insurance to develop systems, but provides no clear timeline for the authority to prescribe the rules. It promises refunds, but caps on the value of the policy benefits, leaving policyholders still at a loss. Furthermore, this bill only addresses multiple policies issued by the same insurer. Our people hold policies across different insurers. This bill does nothing to protect them from that reality. It is a half measure that fails to address the full scope of the problem. The Patriotic Alliance believes our people deserve better than half measures. They deserve comprehensive protection. We call for this bill to be referred back to the consultation and strengthening. We will not support legislation that gives false hope to the poor and the vulnerable of this community. We stand with our people, not for flawed legislation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The FF Plus. Action SA.
Honourable Chairperson, funeral insurance is important for millions of South Africans as it is a way of protecting families against the financial consequences of death. This is why the principle behind this bill deserves our support. The problem it seeks to address is straightforward. A policyholder may hold multiple funeral policies covering the same person or life event, yet, under the existing regulatory framework, benefits payable by the same insurer can be subject to an aggregate limit. The result is that a person can continue paying premiums on multiple policies, only to discover when a claim is made that those additional policies do not provide the additional benefits that they expected. That is a consumer protection problem. The bill seeks to address this by moving the point at which the problem is identified from the claim stage to the point at which the policy is sold. Insurers would have to identify overlapping policies and clearly disclose the costs, maximum benefits, and applicable limitations. Existing policyholders would also have to be informed and given an opportunity to cancel policies they no longer need. We particularly welcome this emphasis on informed choices. Consumers should know what they're paying for, what they're entitled to receive, and what the limitations of their cover are. And this is not merely an abstract concern. Just this week, reporting from a murder for insurance trial in the Eastern Cape highlighted an extraordinary gap in our current system. People can apparently have multiple funeral policies taken out on their lives without even knowing that these policies exist. Some of these victims in that case reportedly had 5, 6, or 8 policies across different insurers. That raises an important question for this Parliament. The bill improves transparency where multiple policies exist within the same insurer. But what happens when those policies are spread across several insurers? This is one of the questions we believe the committee should interrogate as the bill proceeds. There are other legitimate questions too. Does the bill go far enough in addressing issues of advice and product suitability? And is the compliance burden it places on insurance practical, particularly when dealing with existing policyholders and beneficiaries? These are not reasons to reject the bill. These are reasons to scrutinize it properly. At its core, the legislation is about ensuring that ordinary South Africans do not spend their hard-earned money on insurance cover whose limitations are only discovered when it's too late. Action SA therefore supports the bill in principle and supports its progression to the next stage of the legislative process. We look forward to participating constructively in the committee's process, including considering whether further measures are necessary to ensure transparency and consumer protection across the funeral insurance industry as a whole. We support the bill as it currently stands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ACDP.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. The ACDP asserts that the Long-Term Insurance Amendment Bill addresses an important gap in consumer protection, particularly in the funeral insurance market. The bill responds to concerns that policyholders may hold multiple funeral policies covering the same beneficiaries or life event, only to discover the limitations of such overlapping cover when a claim is made. The need for this bill is therefore clear. Many South Africans, particularly low-income households, faithfully pay funeral insurance premiums because they want to protect their families from the financial burden associated with death. It is fundamentally unfair if consumers pay multiple premiums without receiving a clear understanding of whether those policies provide additional benefits. The ACDP understands that this bill seeks to empower the Financial Sector Conduct Authority to prescribe rules protecting holders of multiple funeral policies. It also requires insurers to disclose the consequences of multiple policies, gives policyholders the right to cancel duplicate policies covering the same life event, and protects the validity of a policy where another funeral policy was not disclosed. Importantly, insurers can face sanctions for failing to comply. The ACDP believes that the consequences could be significant. For consumers, the bill should mean greater transparency, informed choice, and potentially reduce unnecessary premium payments. It will also strengthen accountability within the insurance industry. However, Parliament must guard against unintended consequences. Additional compliance and administrative requirements could increase costs for insurers, and there is a possibility that these costs could ultimately be reflected in premiums. We must also ensure that regulatory requirements are proportionate and do not disadvantage smaller insurers or reduce competition. But protection must translate into meaningful financial relief and certainty for policyholders, not merely additional regulation. South Africans must never be placed in a position where they pay for protection for years, only to discover at the moment of greatest need that the protection they purchased does not provide what they reasonably expected. As kingdom builders, the ACDP welcomes the bill's consumer protection objective. Thank you, Honourable Chair, and certainly good to see you, and we are not intimidated, Chair.
I'll take that one. Thank you, Honourable Tring. Also good to see you. The next speaker is from the UDM. Rice. Bosa. ATM. Al-Jama. NCC. PAC. UAT. Good. The DA.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everybody. Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance welcomes the introduction of the Long-Term Insurance Amendment Bill. It addresses a genuine consumer protection gap that has left too many South Africans without proper information about funeral policies that they purchase. The problem is clear. Consumers often don't know that they hold multiple funeral policies with the same insurer until the claim is rejected. They pay premiums for policies that won't pay out simply because no one checked or informed them of the implication. This is unacceptable. The bill corrects that this be required that the insurer detects duplicate funeral policies and provides written advice about the costs, benefits, and limitations involved. We support this objective entirely. However, we identified critical amendments needed to be made to make this workable and fair. Firstly, the requirement to advise existing policy holders is too broad. The bill requires insurers of office to disclose to all funeral policy holders, not just those with duplicate policies. This creates unnecessary costs for insurers who have already ensured that there's only one policy holder. We would narrow this in cases that this is only when there is duplicate policies that already exist. Secondly, the cancellation provided that creates practical chaos. The bill says that the policyholder can cancel within 31 days of receiving advice. But what if an insurer makes the offer and the policyholder doesn't respond? Do they get to cancel years later? This exposes insurers to infinite financial limbo. We need to create clearer time limits. Insurers offer within 12 months. Policyholders must accept within a further period, and cancellation rights apply only then. And thirdly, we recommend that the advice go to both the policy applicant and the affected beneficiary. Greater protection requires clarity all round. These aren't objections to the consumer protection, they're refinement to make this more workable and durable. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority must have rules that achieve the genuine policy objective, inform consumers, not blanket requirements that create unmanageable, complicated burdens. The Democratic Alliance is committed to supporting this bill with these amendments. Consumer protection and regulatory certainty can and must work together. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is from the ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, House Chair. And the ANC supported that this bill move to the next stage, that is in the committees. And we believe that the long-term insurance amendment bill seeks to address a matter that is significant and impacts bereaved persons and result in financial loss when no value is gained from funeral insurance cover in circumstances of multiple funeral cover that results in the forfeiture of benefits and all expected funds. And according to 2024 Financial Scope Survey, 58% of adults in South Africa consider funeral insurance the most important insurance product. In contrast, the uptake of life insurance remains comparatively low at 11%, with 83% of adult South Africans having never had life insurance. There is also a significant research gap. Although funeral insurance represents about 45% of life insurance complaints, and declined claims make up more than half of funeral complaints published. The highlights that needs to focus on to the challenge impacting long-term insurance. The African National Congress has identified the need to focus on various components of the financial sector to ensure that it is developmental and provide quality services that protect its product holders. A focus on funeral insurance is an important component the committee should consider. The ASISA 2025 report has highlighted that the funeral insurance recurring premium book approximately 45.1 billion per year, and this consists of 27.2 billion in individual funeral policies, 15.2 billion in grouped individual funeral policies, and 2.6 billion in group funeral business for approximately 17.2 holders. This is a significant component of the insurance sector, and the sector contributes to job creation with the production value chain supporting it. There needs to be a quantification of declined benefits which relate to policyholders, as they only made aware of the implications of holding multiple funeral policies as intended by the object of the bill. It is a matter that the Finance Standing Committee should consider, and the ANC will further engage in the process with the intention of resolving the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Kwankwa to reply to the debate. The Honourable Kwankwa.
Well, thank you very much, colleagues. What is important here is that most of you, all of you, in fact, except for one colleague who seemed to have completely misunderstood the objects of the bill, is that you understand the crux of the problem. And those who interact with ordinary South Africans on a daily basis would realize that this is a serious problem, especially after they've spent thousands of their money on funeral plans and funeral policies that they never benefit from at the end of the process. We encounter this on a regular basis. Abantu bethu sihlalo bayifumana rhoqo naxa senza i-constituency ingxaki ebafumana oko asizuthi ke ngoku xa kufuna siyilungisile singayilungisi. We appreciate the colleagues who've made some very cogent arguments, making suggestions about how this bill can be enhanced and improved, and ultimately it is intended to protect the consumer, but we don't want to create unnecessary burdens on the industry. So we're happy with trying to achieve a very important balancing act as a legislator. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, colleagues, for the debate.
Well, thank you, Honourable Kwankwa. Honourable members, that concludes the first reading debate on this bill. And honourable members are reminded that no decision on the bill is taken, but the bill is regarded as having been read a first time, and deliberations will continue in the relevant portfolio committee. The second item on the order paper is the consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development on oversight visit to the Gauteng Department of Social Development, its funded NPOs, the National DSD Gender-Based Violence Command Center, and to the National Development Agency and its funded projects. I now recognize the Honorable Masango, who is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The Portfolio Committee of Social Development conducted an oversight to Gauteng province from the 25th to the 27th of March 2025. During the visit, the committee received a progress report from the Gauteng Provincial Department of Social Development regarding the state of NPO funding, following the committee's prior engagement with the department on the 13th November 2024. Additionally, the committee was briefed by the South African Local Government Association on the municipal bylaws requirement applicable to the NPO sector and the support provided to the sector. A further briefing was received from the National Development Agency, which covered the programs it implements, the NPOs, NGOs, and cooperatives it funds, the impact of its funding, and the intervention of the Department of Social Development in Gauteng, as well as the details on the grant funding budget. The objectives, Honorable Chairperson, of this visit was to meet with the Gauteng Department, the Gauteng Department of Social Development, to receive a briefing on the progress that has been made in the NPO sector, the funding of the province, and redressing the decision taken by the Sixth Administration and the financial and non-financial support to the NPO sector, legislative framework implemented, the budget allocated for the NPO sector, and the report on the compliant and non-compliant NPOs and reasons for these non-compliant sectors. To meet with the department, with the South African Local Government Association, also to meet with the head of National Development Agency to receive a briefing, to receive the briefing of the program on the programs it implements. We also wanted to meet with the NPO sector to receive a follow-up report. And lastly, to conduct site visits to selected NPOs that are funded by the department, and to receive briefing on the programs and services that they render. Honorable Chairperson and colleagues, this visit, I'm so sorry, I'm being disturbed by the phones.
Tell Zille to stop calling.
No, order. No, honorable members. Honorable Totsetsi, that is now uncalled for. Please proceed, honorable member.
This visit was a success, and we got all the information that we had wanted to get from the various NPOs and the Department of Social Development in Gauteng. As a result of this, we resolved as the Portfolio Committee that the NDA should submit a technical response to the Portfolio Committee on the impact of grant funding. The report should also include reasons for fluctuations in the National Development Agency funding. The National Development Agency should extend formal invitations to committee members to attend its events and visits to the NPOs it funds. This will strengthen oversight and engagement, and also to allow committee members to gain first-hand insight into the impact of the NDA's programs and the work of the funded NPOs. The NDA should also present its turnaround strategy to the portfolio committee. The agency should submit a list of its provincial offices and their locations to the portfolio committee. So on behalf of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development, I hereby table this report for this House to consider and adopt. Thank you, Honourable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kwankwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. Sihlalo ohloniphekile namalunga onke. Ngiphakama ngithunywa umkhonto wesizwe nabahlali base South Africa. Siwumkhonto wesizwe sicela abahlali bonke base South Africa ukuba ngomhla ka-4 November bahambe bayovota. Bavotele umkhonto wesizwe party ngoba lo mbiko utshengisa ngokusobala ukuthi i-GNU ye-ANC DA IFP ayisoze ikwazi ukulekelela labo abobulili nabahlukumezekile, abesifazane, amantombazane nabafana. Bebebazi ukuthi labantu bahlukumezeke kangakanani emphakathini abaphila kuyona. Futhi abazimisele ukuxhasa nokulekelela ama-NPO ngemali. Bebebazi ukuthi ama-NPO asebenza kangakanani emphakathini esihlala kuyo, ngisho ahlula ngisho iminyango kahulumeni. Imbiko inikeza ngokusobala ukuthi ama-NPO asebenza ngempela emphakathini yethu, enza imisebenzi engabe yenziwa uhulumeni. Kodwa uhulumeni we-GNU akanandaba nama-NPO. Uhulumeni akakhokheli ama-NPO ngesikhathi esifanele. Ama-NPO agcine engasakwazi ukusiza abantu emphakathini. Umbiko utshengisa ukuthi u-71% wemisebenzi engabe yenziwa uhulumeni yenziwa ama-NPO. Uhulumeni aphinde ahlukanise isivumelwano asenza nama-NPO kungakafiki isikhathi. Nomasipala bayayisikela kuwona ama-NPO, bawahlukumeza ngemithetho engacacile, imithetho eyayiphila ngale kwa-1994. Kuyoze kube nini-ke uhulumeni ezwisa abantu bakithi ubuhlungu obungaka. Sihlalo ohloniphekile, sibuye siyavakashela i-GBV Command Center. Kubuhlungu kakhulu ukwazi ukuthi uhulumeni wanamuhla awufuni ukufaka imali ezintweni ezibalulekile ezifana ne-GBV Command Center, lapho khona kubalulekile ukuthi abantu abasebenza khona kuba abantu ngempela abazokwazi ukuthi bakhulume izilimi zonke zu-11 ezikhona lapha eSouth Africa, ukwazi ukusiza wonke umuntu ohlukumezekile ngisho ngabe ukhuluma luphi ulimi. Kubuhlungu kakhulu ukuthi nomongameli noma eseyibizile i-GBV nge-national disaster, kodwa akayifaki imali ey'nhlelweni ezizolekelela ukusiza labo asebehlukumezekile. Sihlalo ohloniphekile, siphinde sanomhlangano nenhlangano yentuthuko yazwelonke, i-National Development Agency. Imibiko isitshengisa ukuthi le nhlangano ithuthukise izinhlangano ezu-21 kuphela eSouth Africa yonke jikelele ngesabelo mali esingu-9.4 million. Kanjani nje ukuthi kusizwe abantu ngo-9.4 million sihlupheke kangaka eSouth Africa? Sihlalo ohloniphekile, le nhlangano iyona ebhekelekile ukuba ikhiphe abantu bakithi abamnyama ebugqileni abafakwa uhulumeni wencindezelo, uhulumeni wabamhlophe, lo ola njengamanje kwi-GNU namhlanje. Uhulumeni akakhoni ukufaka imali ngoba akulindelekile ukuthi umuntu omnyama akwazi ukuthi aphinde asukume aphume ebugqilini akubona. Sihlalo ohloniphekile, sisekomiteni sesikhulume saze sakhihliza amagwebu, siwumkhonto wesizwe, sicela ukuba akufakwe imali la kwi-NDA, kodwa cha, uhulumeni we-GNU awufuni. Umbuzo omkhulu-ke umbuzo othi uma kuwukuthi ayifakwa imali la kwi-NDA, abantu bazosizakala kanjani? Ngoba i-NDA yona emele ukukhipha abantu bakithi kubo bonke ubugqila esikubona esafakwa
Honorable
ongciwa.
Prabaza, your time has now expired, Umfundisi.
Thank you so much, Chair. Vote MK.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. The next
Thank you.
speaker is the Honorable Marais.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and good day to all the colleagues. Chairperson, this report shows how heavily government depends on NPOs to provide essential services to the most vulnerable. The reports tell us that the NPOs deliver almost 71% of government's statutory service. Many do important work, but this dependence must concern us. NPOs must complement a capable Department of Social Development. They cannot substitute for one. The dependency is the sequence of the years of ANC government weakening state capacity and outsourcing responsibility that the state itself must be capable of carrying. The EFF support decisive actions against NPOs that steal, misuse public money or fail to deliver. But when an organization fails, the department cannot abandon those people who depend on it. Children must be fed, older persons cared for, and vulnerable people supported. This is why the failure of food banks matters. For a family without enough food, a food bank that does not deliver means another night without proper meal. House Chair, thousands of young people across Gauteng are without jobs and meaningful opportunities. While poverty and substance abuse destroy communities, yet the department cannot point to only one youth development program. For the EFF, this is nowhere near enough. Young people need programs that provide skills, connect them to jobs and economic opportunities. Funding for women development programs reflects zero because expenditure was incorrect, allocated, and went undetected for an entire year. Women cannot be a priority while money means that their development is not proper, accounted for, or reaching programs meant to empower them. House Chair, social workers at the Gender-Based Violence Command Center receive calls from people who have been raped, abused, trafficked, or are escaping violence. They carry emotional weight on these cases while helping victims through the worst moments of their lives. But answering the call is only the beginning. Protection must reach rural communities and townships, persons with disability and people who cannot afford mobile data. A victim must be able to reach social development, SAPS, healthcare, shelter, and courts without carrying their own cases through a government that does not speak for itself. The test is what happened after the first call, whether helps arrive, whether there's a safe place to go to, whether the case reaches police and the courts, and whether the system can carry the victims through protection and justice. For the EFF, this required enough social workers, multilingual service bechalters, rural outreach, reliable gender-based violence data, and data-free access to support. House Chair, the social development cannot become a department that merely account for poverty and manage vulnerability. It must feed people who is hungry and protect people in crisis, while creating opportunities for young people and economic independence of women. The EFF support the report and its recommendation that will hold the department accountable for the implementation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mate.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. The IFP knows the Portfolio Committee on Social Development's report based on its visit to the Gauteng Department of Social Development. We are pleased with the level of oversight provided by the committee and strongly advocate for their findings to be enforced. Non-profit are a pillar of South Africa's welfare system, and there cannot be any obstacle preventing the department from supporting them appropriately. Consequently, we emphasize the importance of reviewing the bylaws from each municipality that currently prevent NPOs from providing effective service delivery. Additionally, we note the insufficient budget allocated to the National Development Agency. This lack of funding prevents the agency from fulfilling its role as a key financial channel for welfare programs. We highlighted the necessity of increasing the NDA's budget so that it may facilitate effective development work as stated in the NDA Act. The IFP has consistently advocated supporting grassroots welfare programs. We must enable the Portfolio Committee's recommendations through practical action, in which are the protect South Africa's most vulnerable groups. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a speaker from the PA? The FF Plus? Then the Honourable Kobe from Action SA. The ACDP. The Honourable Nontenja. Rise. Hausa, ATM, Al-Jama, NCC, PAC, UAT, Good, and the DA. The honourable members on the platform or not, can the table just advise me, please?
Honourable Chairperson.
Yes, honourable member.
Sorry, if DA is completed, may I please have my opportunity? The signal was just very bad and the platform threw me out, sir.
You may proceed, honourable member.
Thank you very much.
53 complaints and case matters during the year under review. Of the 49 matters finalized within its mandate, only 19 resulted in adverse findings against the DPCI and its members, which is incredibly concerning. These complaints included allegations of improper investigations, undue delay.
Honourable Basson, I suggest that you try to get into an area where you have a better signal, because you were for most part of your input not audible.
That was not me speaking, sir.
Are you speaking on the report of social development, Honourable Basson?
Yes, sir, but the previous speaker was not me speaking, sir.
My apologies then. Honourable Basson, you may proceed now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honourable Chairperson, the Patriotic Alliance welcome this report, but we cannot simply welcome reports while our people continue to suffer. The report expresses system weakened by poor conditioning, funding constraints, and governance challenges. Chairperson, we cannot accept this as business as usual. We are in Women Month, yet women still being killed, raped, and trafficked every single day. This month, we lost 2 young women from Reiger Park, 27-year-old Jaden Magerman and 31-year-old Raylene Lessing. These were not statistics. They were daughters, loved ones, and women with futures ahead of them. Their families are left with pain that cannot be undone. We are told GBV command centres operates 24 hours a day, yet it faces staff shortages, language barriers, limited racial access and poor conditions. In some rural areas, people cannot even have access to this service. Chairperson, recommendations cannot prevent a woman from being attacked. Implementation can. We cannot keep writing policies while women are losing their lives. The Patriotic Alliance therefore says, enough is enough. Move from policy to action, from action to results, and from promises to implementation with intent. Our NPOs also need support, but funding must come with transparency, accountability, and measurable results. These organizations serve our most vulnerable communities and should not be trapped with unnecessary red tape and paperwork. Social development must create skills, employment, dignity, and suitable livelihoods, not dependency. Chairperson, the choice is simple. We cannot congratulate ourselves of policies on paper. We can and must ensure the results for the people on the ground. We need action. We need accountability. We need coordination. And above all, we need implementation with intent, because every woman deserves more than
Member,
promising.
your time has now expired.
We thank you, sir.
Thank you. The Honorable Kobe, I understand you now on the platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, House Chair. Yes, I am on the platform. Honorable House Chair, the Department of Social Development is supposed to be the safety net for South Africans who are most vulnerable. But for too many people, that safety net is full of holes. Every day, South Africans depend on social grants to survive. Families depend on government-funded organizations to provide care. Victims of gender-based violence depend on the state to answer the call when they ask for help. Yet, across our communities, we continue to see failures in service delivery, inadequate support, and weak accountability. We must stop measuring success by how many programs government announces. We must measure it by whether vulnerable South Africans actually received the help they were promised. The organizations working on the ground cannot be treated as an afterthought. NPOs provide essential services to children, the elderly, people with disabilities, and victims of abuse. Government must ensure that funding reaches them on time, that contracts are properly monitored, and that every rand delivers a meaningful outcome. And when someone calls the GBV command center, they should not encounter another bureaucratic obstacle. They should encounter a state that responds. Honorable House Chair, social development cannot simply be about keeping people dependent on grants. It must also be about creating opportunities, strengthening families, and giving people a genuine pathway out of poverty. The people who need government most cannot afford the government to fail them. I thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Nontenja. Is there a speaker from the UDM? There's not. Then I will go to the Honorable Sharif of the DA.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The Oversight visit to Gauteng brought into sharp focus a reality government simply cannot ignore. Without our NPOs and NGOs, our social protection system simply would not reach the people who need it most. These organizations are not peripheral to government. They are essential delivery partners. And as our chairperson has said, the NPO sector delivers approximately 71% of statutory social services. So when an NPO is not funded, or when funding is delayed, or when an organization is forced to close its doors, the consequences do not stop with that organization. They are felt by the elderly person who loses access to home-based care, by the child who loses access to a meal, and by the woman fleeing violence who no longer has access to a shelter. That is what delays in NPO funding, what makes it so concerning. NPOs operate on tight budgets. They employ social workers, caregivers, counselors, and support staff, while carrying costs for rent, electricity, food, and transport. When government delays funding, these organizations are expected to still deliver essential services without the resources to do so. Let's be clear. The DA supports accountability. Public money must be protected, and organizations that misuse funds must face consequences. The committee itself raised concerns about an organization seeking continued funding despite allegations of mishandling allocated funds. Government has an obligation to hold funded organizations accountable. The oversight found that NPOs face significant challenges complying with municipal bylaws, zoning requirements, environmental health regulations, tax requirements, and other legislative obligations. Compliance can be costly, and the committee identified the need for more centralized support. Compliance must be accompanied by capacitation. If an NPO is struggling to comply, the first question should not always be, how do we stop the funding? No, it should be, how do we help this organization become compliant? The department already conducts capacitation workshops for non-compliant NPOs, but this is not enough. We must strengthen and expand this support while ensuring that social development, municipalities, and other government entities provide clear and coordinated requirements. And the oversight visits demonstrated why this matters. At Ikusasa Letu Youth Project in Soweto, the committee saw an organization providing home-based care to 134 beneficiaries, including elderly people who are bedridden and vulnerable children. Yet the organization faces caregiver burnout, emotional strain, limited funding, and a shortage of male caregivers. Its service center also operates with limited funding and depends heavily on external stakeholders. These are people filling critical gaps in our social protection system. We cannot expect them to carry this burden indefinitely and without support and resources. At Mali Martin Polo Kekong Center, the committee saw an organization providing shelter and support to women and children exposed to violence, including victims of human trafficking. It also provides victim empowerment and skills development programs. These are not abstract programs, honorable members. These are lifelines. When funding is interrupted, we cannot simply ask whether an NPO can balance its books. We must ask who will care for the elderly person, who will support the woman escaping violence, and who will feed the vulnerable child. The DA's vision is to build a caring and resilient society, one that protects people when they are vulnerable, while helping them regain independence and withstand future shocks. That requires government to work with organizations already embedded in our communities, a whole of society approach. NPOs and NGOs must therefore be treated as genuine delivery partners, properly funded, properly capacitated, properly monitored, and held accountable for results. We must measure impact. We must ask whether these programs are actually improving people's lives and helping people become more self-sufficient. The DA believes a caring state is not one that tries to do everything itself. It is one that knows where its capacity ends, works with those already serving communities, and ensures that every single rand spent of taxpayers' money produces a real improvement in someone's life. Honorable House Chair, the bottom line is fund where there is need, capacitate where there is weakness, act decisively where there is abuse, and measure whether people's lives are actually improving. This is how we build a resilient society. Ultimately, social development is not only about protecting government systems, it is about protecting the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Magatu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The consideration of this crucial oversight visits sits in a historic month that shaped the destiny of the country forever. The women of country continue to play an instrumental role in building households, shaping communities, and leading institutions in various magnitudes. Henceforth, we draw inspiration from Mama Charlotte Mategi, whose legacy reminds us that leadership must be measured by how many people we lift with us. She said, "This work is not for ourselves. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above people. If you can rise, bring someone with you." I rise on behalf of the African National Congress to affirm the significance of parliamentary oversight in ensuring that social development programs translate into enhancement and lives of hundreds of the marginalized and vulnerable people. The Portfolio Committee Oversight visit to Gauteng revealed that social development is not merely about allocations and programs. Instead, it is about restoring dignity, protecting vulnerable community, and creating pathways towards sustainable livelihoods. The visits expose the role played by non-profit organizations in delivering essential statutory services for governance. However, the oversight and that numerous NPOs continue to encounter finding constraints, poor compliance, and conflict with bylaws. To mitigate the present challenges, the ANC in the committee strongly advocated for capacity building, strengthening intergovernmental coordination, and standardizing approaches to municipal requirements. The ANC views these interventions as crucial and urgently needed to ensure that NPOs continue to serve our vulnerable people of South Africa. During the oversight visit to the Gender-Based Violence Command Center, we got first-hand experience of the immensely crucial work to support victims of GBV and related social ills. For instance, Mali Martin Polokegong Center provides temporary accommodation, multiple pathways for victims' empowerment, such as skills development and programs aimed at changing abusive behavior among men and boys. However, the stark reality is that the center encounters staff shortages, limited accessibility for persons with disability and people of rural areas, language barriers, and need for stronger coordination which require attention. It is under these circumstances that the ANC continues to give unwavering support to efforts of DSD towards investing in NPOs capacity, scaling up GBV prevention and response, women empowerment and community services. In addition, the ANC reiterates the call for stronger outreach to rural areas, payment of NPOs in time, consistent monitoring, and improved access to GBV services, including through data-free digital platform. On the other hand, the National Development Agency's work requires improvement so as to immensely contribute to poverty eradication, skills development, and sustainable community enterprises. Finally, Chairperson, in supporting this declaration, we, the ANC, remain strongly committed to a social development system that does not merely manage poverty, but aids our people to overcome it. A system that protects the vulnerable and builds strong and sustainable livelihoods. Chairperson, I thank you. Let's go and vote for the ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, that concludes the debate, and the decision of this report will be taken at a full plenary session of the National Assembly. We now proceed to the third order, which is the last item on the order paper, is the consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities on oversight visit to Gauteng. To introduce this report, I would allow the Portfolio Chairperson of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Honorable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson Majosi. As part of its oversight program for the 7th Parliament, the Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities visited the offices of the Commission for Gender Equality, the National Youth Development Agency, and the department's offices in Gauteng from 29 to 30 April 2026. The visit to the department was prompted by concerns raised by the Honourable Minister that the department is underfunded and therefore lacks the basic resources needed to fulfill its mandate effectively. The committee therefore assessed whether the department's current budget allocation is sufficient to support the implementation of its mandate in light of the impact of operations because of the office accommodation challenges. The visits to the NYDA and CGE offices were undertaken to investigate whistleblower reports about poor working conditions and to assess the office and accommodation in relation to funds allocated. The committee, having visited the department's head office in the Fetshaw building, Pretoria, were aware that the department allocated 10.7 million for property payments for the 2026-2027 financial year as per the APP 2026-2027. The committee noted with concern the appalling conditions of the building, in terms of the lack of adequate ventilation, general infrastructure, safety and security concerns, lifts not working optimally, high staff occupancies per offices, and poor internet connectivity, inadequate storage facilities for documentation, and a general lack of signage. The committee also noted with concern that despite the engagement and visit by the Minister of Public Works to the department, there has been no progress in dealing with the infrastructure concerns. Having visited the National Youth Development Agency, the committee noted that in the ABP for 2026-2027, prior to the oversight visit, that the NYDA was spending an exorbitant amount on head office accommodation, amounting to over R1 million per month for its Sunningdale offices in Johannesburg. The committee noted with concern the general lack of signage for the NYDA at its offices, therefore not making the agency visible to the public. During the oversight visit to the offices, the committee noted the inaccessibility of the head office for youth utilizing public transport. The committee also noted that the location of the head office did not lend itself to be accessible for youth given its location. The committee further noted with concern that the NYDA's long lease term of 7 years for the head office and queried how that arrangement was reached. The committee maintained that alternative accommodation that is more accessible to the youth should be leased by the NYDA at a significantly less amount. With regard to our visit to the CGE chairperson, conducting the oversight visit and walkabout at the CGE offices, the committee again noted with concern appalling conditions of the buildings in terms of its lack of adequate ventilation, general infrastructure concerns and safety concerns. The building was old and a heritage site and therefore cannot be renovated. Again, the lifts were not working. They had small offices that required a large number of staff to be in small offices, poor internet connectivity, inadequate storage facilities, and no proper document management. The committee then resolved as follows to invite the Minister of Public Works to brief the committee regarding urgent infrastructure concerns for the department and the CGE. The committee to invite the Minister of Public Works to brief the committee on potential earmarked buildings for the department as its lease was coming to an end. The committee to invite the Minister of Public Works to provide clarity on the processes to determine the suitability of office accommodation. The committee will also engage the National Youth Development Agency going forward on a proposed cost-effective measures related to its office accommodation and lease agreements. And the CGE was to keep the committee updated in terms of its head office relocation to a temporary office space, noting the relocation date of 1 August. I therefore table this report to this House for its consideration. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I will now recognize Honourable Khatebe from the MK. Honourable Khatebe.
Thank you, House Chair. As the government in waiting, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party has considered this report with the seriousness of constitutional responsibility demands. We will not oppose the observation and findings contained in the report. We welcome them because they expose failures that require urgent and decisive intervention, but it falls to us as a government in waiting to draw a clear distinction that this committee cannot afford to blur. The observations are stronger than the recommendation. The committee has uncovered serious governance, financial and operational concern, yet the proposed response is likely to invite ministers to brief the committee, engage institutions, receive updates and request documents. That is not enough. It is not what the public elected the MK party to accept. Parliament cannot become a place where government failure is documented, discussed, and then simply refer back to the same executive for another briefing. Oversight must have consequences. Where it does not, the MK party will say so plainly. Honorable Chairperson, look at the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability, the very department responsible for advancing the dignity and rights of women, youth and persons with disability is operating in premises with poor ventilation, deteriorating infrastructure, overcrowded offices, inadequate storage, poor connectivity, and serious security concern. And yet 10.79 million is allocated for property payment in this financial year. We must therefore ask, who approved this list? Who inspected these premises? Who certified them as suitable? Who knew about this condition, and why has nobody been held accountable? This cannot remain rhetorical question. As MK party, we require answers, not assurances. If there was negligence, there must be consequence management. If there was maladministration, there must be an investigation. If public money was wasted, Parliament must establish how and why. Honorable Chairperson, the situation at NYDA is equally disturbing. More than 1 million every month is being spent on its head office in Sunning Hill. The committee observed less than 40% staff occupants on the day of the visit. There is a 7-year lease while the location is not readily accessible to the very young people the agency exists to serve. This is not simple an accommodation issue. It raises serious questions about procurement, financial prudence, accessibility, value for money, and accountability. We need to know who negotiated the lease, who approved it, what alternatives were considered, what the total contractual liability is, whether the public received value for money, and where wrongdoing, negligence, or maladministration is established, there must be consequences. The MK party will not settle for less. As the Commission for Gender Equality, Chapter 9 institution entrusted with protecting constitutional democracy and advancing gender equality, the committee found unacceptable infrastructure, security, and documentation management condition. Again, the report records the failure, but Parliament must go further. We must identify responsibility, establish the causes, quantity, the financial implication, and demand a time-bound remedial plan. Honorable Chairperson, the MK party as the government in waiting therefore takes a principled position. We support the observation because they expose the failures, but we reject the recommendation in their presence.
Your time has expired, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now recognize the Honorable Mailola.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The Economic Freedom Fighters support the adoption of this report, but we do so with serious reservation. This report exposes a government that has become comfortable with waste, negligence, and the deterioration of institutions that are supposed to serve our people. House Chair, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability is operating in an acceptable condition. The committee found poor ventilation, deteriorating infrastructure, inadequate security, overcrowded offices, poor internet connectivity, and inadequate storage facilities. More disturbing is that these conditions were not new. The committee questioned how the premises were assessed and approved as suitable for occupation in the first place. We must therefore ask directly, who approved these premises? Who conducted the assessment? Who signed off on these leases? And who will account for this failure? The EFF does not believe that government buildings should become monuments to an incompetency, while public servants are forced to work in conditions that compromise their dignity and safety. House Chair, the NYDA presents even more disturbing picture. The committee found that the NYDA is spending more than 1 million every month on its Sunning Hill head office, despite observing less than 40% staff occupancy. The location is also inaccessible to many young people who rely on public transport. This is happening in a country where young people are facing mass unemployment and poverty. How can an institution established to serve unemployed young people justify such extravagant expenditure on offices? The EFF demands transparency on the lease agreements, procurement processes, cost, duration, and decision makers responsible for these arrangements. The Commission for Gender Equality is also operating under unacceptable conditions, including poor infrastructure, inadequate storage, security concerns, and overcrowded offices. House Chair, these are institutions dealing with the most vulnerable sections of our society. They cannot fight for the rights and dignity of our people, while government itself denies them the decent condition in which to work. We welcome the committee's resolution to summon the Minister of Public Works, but let it be clear, calling another briefing is not accountability. Accountability means identify those responsible, producing the contract and procurement record, establishing whether these were negligence or maladministration, recover public money where necessary, and ensure that correction action are clear and have deadline. The EFF will therefore support the adoption of this report, but our support comes with a warning. Parliament must not become a rubber stamp for administrative failure. Public resources belong to the people. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Honorable Maki.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. The IFP acknowledges the Portfolio Committee's report on its oversight visit to the offices of the National Youth Development Agency, the Commission of Gender Equality, and the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. We note with concern the lack of appropriate infrastructure at the latter two offices, without basic resources like ventilations, internet connectivity, and adequate space. Staff members are unable to perform their duties to the best of their ability. Not only does this infringe on workers' rights to secure working conditions, but it also negatively impacts the vulnerable communities the department protects. Staff members who cannot function at full capacity cannot perform their duties properly, which directly impacts the communities they serve. The IFP is pleased with the level of detailed oversight provided by the Portfolio Committee and supports their proposal to involve the Minister of Public Works in the department's pressing infrastructural concerns. We emphasize that our country's most vulnerable cannot be uplifted unless the staff driving society change are empowered first. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The next speaker, it will be Honorable TJ from the Patriotic Alliance. I am saying all this because it's their maiden speech. So can we please be nice? Honorable J.
Honorable House Chair, honorable members, patriots, I rise on behalf of the Patriotic Alliance to fully and clearly support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability. Honorable members, this report exposes nothing less than institutional neglect and state failure. Three critical institutions, the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, the NYDA, and the CGE, are being deliberately starved of basic dignity. Let me be clear, this is a shame. The department operates in a building with no ventilation, no security, and no safety. CVs are dumped in open boxes, an insult to every job seeker. The NYDA burns over 1 million rand per month on inaccessible offices while youth struggle to reach them. The CGE is crumbling in a heritage site that cannot even be renovated. House Chair, ons versoek die minister van Openbare Werke om die komitee onmiddellik te woord te staan. Gevolgbestuur moet toegepas word teen elke amptenaar wat hierdie instellings in die steek gelaat het. onmiddellike verskuiwing na geskikte akkommodasie wat die doel en vereistes voldoen. We will not tolerate a government that treats its own institutions with hatred. We will not allow the rights of women, youth, and persons with disabilities to be undermined by negligence. The Patriotic Alliance stands firm, adopt this report, implement the resolutions, and hold the guilty accountable. Salute ons byzanders. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize the FF Plus. Honorable person, I see your hand.
Chairperson, I would just like to congratulate the Honourable new PA MP on her maiden speech.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize FF Plus. Okay, let's go to Action SA, Honorable Letlape.
Thank you, House Chair. I wouldn't want to repeat what has been said by many members, but just to put it together. We support the report of the committee, but what it highlights is an incapable Public Works Department that is incapable of providing safe accommodation for the various departments. And that creates all the other problems that we have. So there's a failure of public works, which should be put under administration and maybe outsourced by government because it's incapable. When you look at what happens in our villages, you understand the incapability of public works. The second issue is insufficient budget. What comes out is how insufficient the budget is for the department, how weak the budget is for the Commission for Gender Equality, and how weak the budgets are for the core activities of the NYDA. That brings us to a parliament that is indifferent. We can't keep creating structures of government that we do not fund properly to be able to fulfill their missions, and then come out, go on visits, when structures are not properly funded. So we as MPs must take full responsibility for what our departments have become, for what the structures that we create have become. Because we don't accommodate them properly, we don't fund them properly, how do we expect them to function? So it is time that Parliament took responsibility for the mess that we are creating as members of Parliament. And we should not cry victim and act responsibly. Public service must get its act together. We must fund our structures properly for what we expect them to deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Is there a member from ACTP? Any member
No
from
declaration, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Thring. UDM? Rise? Bosa? ATM? Al-Jama? NCC? PAC? UAT? Good. The DA? Honorable Kanyile?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Chairperson, our visit to the NYDA raised an especially important concern, which is value for money and its beneficiation to South African youth. The NYDA's head office is situated in Sandton, an expensive and relatively inaccessible area for many of the young people whom the agency is established and mandated to serve. The committee was informed that the offices were accessible on the basis that there was a taxi rank nearby. However, during our oversight, we established that what was being referred to was not actually a taxi rank. We also noted that approximately 40% of the available office space was being utilized, while the agency is paying approximately 1 million in rental cost. While we acknowledge that the current NYDA board inherited the existing lease and therefore cannot be held responsible for entering into that agreement, the oversight requires us to look forward, not merely backwards. As a government with finite resources, we must be doing more with less. We encourage the NYDA to urgently explore alternative accommodation that is more accessible to young people and provides better value for money. Every rand spent on unnecessary or excessive accommodation is a rand that cannot be directed towards programs that directly benefit employed and economically excluded young people. Our position as a DA is therefore clear. The majority of the NYDA's budget must ultimately be directed towards serving young people rather than sustaining expensive administrative arrangements. Honorable Chairperson, at the Commission for Gender Equality, we similarly observed the infrastructure challenges. The building is visibly dilapidated, and officials informed us that they are unable to address certain faults because the property is situated within a heritage or museum area. We were particularly concerned about the conditions under which general workers operate. They do not have a proper canteen or appropriate space to eat and rest. We were shown small cupboards being used as spaces where workers can relax. This is simply not acceptable. The dignity of workers must not depend on their position within an institution. We also noted that the CGE is currently using part of Constitutional Hill as its offices while construction work is underway. These conditions reinforce the need for an approach to accommodation, not simply as a property issue, but an issue that directly affects institutional effectiveness, staff morale, and service delivery. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the common thread running through these oversight visits that office accommodation cannot be separated from the ability of institutions to fulfill their mandate. However, we must also be careful to distinguish between genuine infrastructure needs and expenditure that does not represent value for money. It is therefore the DA's position that the committee resolves to summon Mr. Caesar Sibande, the head of the property management trading entity at the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, to appear before the portfolio committee to account for his failure to address the urgent infrastructure concerns at the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities head office, despite having been expressly instructed to do so by Minister Dean McPherson. The minister cannot be undermined by the very departmental head charged with addressing infrastructure concerns raised by his political principal. Where officials are working in unsafe, inaccessible, and unhealthy environments, it requires urgent intervention. Where institutions are paying substantial amounts for office space that is underutilized or inaccessible to the very people they serve, we must demand better financial management. And where failures occur, there must be accountability. We support the committee's recommendations regarding the NYDA and encourage the agencies to urgently investigate alternative accommodation that is accessible to young people, while exploring mechanisms to terminate or exit the current lease at the earliest lawful and financially responsible opportunity. Ultimately, our scarce public resources must follow our mandate. For the NYDA, that means young people. For the CGE, that means advancing gender equality. And for the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, that means ensuring that women, young people, and persons with disabilities receive the support and protection they deserve. We cannot expect institutions to deliver exceptional services while asking their officials to work in conditions that undermine their dignity, health, and productivity. We support the report. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize Honorable Chotetsi.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The ANC rises to support the report of the portfolio on its oversight visit to the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the National Youth Development Agencies, and the Commission on Gender Equality in Gauteng. We support this report because it reflects an important exercise of Parliament's constitutional responsibility to hold public institutions accountable and to ensure that the resources entrusted to government are used effectively in pursuit of transformation agenda. Section 55, subsection 2 of the Constitution requires that the National Assembly must maintain oversight over the exercise of executive authority and to ensure accountability. The oversight therefore represents the fundamental work of the committee, moving beyond presentations and written reports to physically assess the conditions under which public servants operate and the extent to which public institutions are positioned to fulfill their mandates. The ANC has historically placed the creation of a capable, developmental, and accountable state to be at the center of the development of the National Democratic Society. The Freedom Charter's commitment to the democratic South Africa, in which the people shall govern, remains relevant to how we understand public accountability today. Government institutions exist to serve the people, and public resources must therefore be directed towards advancing the interest of society, particularly those who continue to experience historical and structural exclusions. Our policies and resolutions have consistently recognized that the emancipation of women, the advancement of young people, and the inclusion of the persons with disabilities cannot be separated from the broader transformation of South African society. For these priorities to be realized, we require institutions that are functional, properly resourced, accessible, and capable of delivering on their mandates. It is therefore in this context that the ANC supports the committee's findings and recommendations. We cannot support a situation where institutions responsible for advancing gender equality, youth development, and the rights of women and persons with disabilities are themselves constrained by inadequate or unsustainable working environments. The state must lead by example. Where infrastructure is inadequate, it must be addressed. Where accommodation is not fit for purpose, appropriate alternatives must be secured. Where public resources are being spent without sufficient value being derived, corrective measures must be taken. The ANC has consistently emphasized that young people must be placed at the center of our developmental agenda. The resources allocated for youth development must therefore be directed as far as possible towards programs and interventions that create meaningful opportunities for young people of our country. We accordingly support the committee's position that the NYDA must pursue a more cost-effective accommodation arrangements and ensure that the expenditure on administration represent value for money. Every rand saved through responsible administration is a rand that can potentially be redirected towards the youth development, skills and entrepreneurship and economy and other economic opportunities. The same principle of responsible public expenditure applies to the Commission of Gender Equality. As a Chapter 9 institution, the CGE plays an important role in advancing the constitutional democracy and promoting gender equality. Its ability to fulfill its responsibility must be protected and strengthened. We therefore support appropriate interventions to address institutional and infrastructure challenges that are identified through the oversight processes, while fully respecting the constitutional independence of the Constitution. Honorable House Chair, the ANC particularly supports the committee's resolution, the ANC support for the committee's resolution arising from the oversight. The ANC further believes that the challenges identified should be used to strengthen the coordination between the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the NYDA and other relevant government structures. Government accommodation should not be approached merely as a facilities management matter. It must be viewed within the broader objective of building a capable and efficient developmental state. We commend the committee for undertaking oversight that went beyond receiving reports and presentations and sought to assess institutional conditions directly. The ANC will continue to use parliamentary oversight to defend public interest, strengthen accountability, and advance the transformation agenda of our democratic state. In that spirit, House Chair, We believe that contrary to a view of convening some junior administrator in the department, the committee's recommendations that the entire Department of Public Works, including the minister, must stand and be supported by all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini plenary session. The decision on this report will be taken at a full plenary session of the National Assembly. The mini plenary will now rise. Thank you.